Picture the most responsible breakfast you can imagine. Maybe it is a golden bowl of granola with low-fat milk. Maybe it is whole wheat toast drizzled with a light vegetable oil spread. Canola, sunflower, something that says heart healthy, right there on the label in bold green letters. Maybe it is a smoothie made with a tablespoon of flaxseed oil, because someone on the internet told you it was good for your heart. You eat this breakfast every single morning. You feel virtuous. You feel like you are doing the right thing, and your arteries are paying the price for every single bite. Because the one fat that has been marketed to you as the solution to heart disease for the last 50 years is, according to a growing and now undeniable body of research, one of the primary drivers of it. And the most terrifying part is not that you have been eating the wrong thing. The most terrifying part is that the label told you it was right. This is not a fringe theory. This is not a keto influencer selling supplements. The research pointing to seed oils, refined vegetable oils made from soybeans, sunflower seeds, rapeseed, corn and cottonseed, as a major driver of arterial inflammation and cardiovascular disease has been accumulating in peer-reviewed journals for decades. A reanalysis of the Sydney Diet Heart Study, originally conducted in the 1960s, found that participants who replaced saturated fat with linoleic, acid-rich vegetable oils had a 62% higher rate of death from cardiovascular causes compared to the control group, 62% higher. In the group eating the supposedly heart-healthy fat, these results were buried for 40 years. And in that same 40 years, the American Heart Association continued to stamp its approval on the exact oils that study condemned. Today we are going to explain exactly what happens inside your arteries when you eat these oils, why the science was suppressed, what you should be eating instead, and how to find out right now whether the damage has already begun. To understand what seed oils do inside your body, you need to understand one molecule, linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is an omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. Your body needs small amounts of it. It is classified as an essential fatty acid, meaning you must get it from food. The problem is not that linoleic acid exists, the problem is the quantity. For most of human history, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in the human diet was somewhere between 2:1 and 4:1. Today, in a diet built on seed oils, that ratio has exploded to somewhere between 15:1 and 25:1 in the average person. That imbalance is not a minor nutritional footnote. It is a systemic biological crisis, because omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids compete for the same metabolic pathways in your body. When omega-6 dominates, it drives the production of pro-inflammatory compounds called arachidonic acid cascades, molecules that signal your immune system to stay in a state of chronic, low-level inflammation. And chronic inflammation is not just uncomfortable, it is the single most important environmental driver of atherosclerosis, the process by which plaque builds inside artery walls and leads to heart attacks and strokes. But linoleic acid imbalance is only half the problem. The other half happens before the oil even reaches your body. It happens in the bottle, in the frying pan, and in the industrial processing facility. Polyunsaturated fats are chemically unstable. Their double bond structure, which makes them liquid at room temperature, also makes them extraordinarily vulnerable to oxidation. The same process that turns cut apple flesh brown or makes old butter go rancid. When seed oils are extracted from their source material, they are exposed to high heat, chemical solvents like hexane, and industrial bleaching processes that oxidize the fat molecules before they ever reach the grocery shelf. And when you then heat these already oxidized oils in a pan to cook your morning eggs or toast, you drive that oxidation even further. What you pour into your body is not a neutral fat. It is a chemically degraded molecule that your immune system recognizes as a threat. The result is a specific and measurable marker called oxidized LDL, low-density lipoprotein, that has been chemically altered by oxidative damage. Standard cholesterol tests do not measure oxidized LDL. Your doctor's routine lipid panel tells you your total LDL number, but it does not tell you whether that LDL is the large, buoyant, relatively harmless kind, or the small, dense, oxidized kind that lodges in arterial walls and triggers the inflammatory cascade that becomes plaque. This distinction is everything, and almost nobody is testing for it. Now here is where the story becomes something more than a nutrition debate, because the linoleic acid problem does not travel alone. it brings accomplices. The first is the omega-3 deficiency that almost inevitably accompanies high seed oil consumption. When your diet is dominated by omega-6 rich oils, you do not just have too much omega-6, you have too little omega-3 reaching the tissues that need it, because those two families of fat are in constant competition. EPA and DHA, the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids found in fatty fish, grass-fed animal products and algae, are the raw materials your body uses to produce anti-inflammatory compounds called resolvins and protectins. Without enough EPA and DHA, your body cannot resolve inflammation once it has started. It cannot send the stand-down signal to the immune cells that have gathered inside your artery walls. Inflammation that was meant to be a temporary repair response becomes a permanent state, and over months and years, that permanent state becomes plaque. The second accomplice is trans fats, not the banned industrial trans fats, but the naturally occurring trans fats created when seed oils are partially hydrogenated or when they are heated repeatedly, as happens in restaurant fryers and commercial food processing. Even in small amounts, these compounds have been shown to raise small dense LDL, lower protective HDL, and increase inflammatory markers more powerfully than almost any other dietary factor. They are invisible on most food labels. They accumulate quietly. The third accomplice, and this is the one the food industry worked hardest to hide, is the displacement effect. When Americans were told in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s to replace butter, lard, tallow, and coconut oil with vegetable oils and margarine, they did not just swap one fat for another. They replaced stable, minimally processed, nutrient-dense animal fats with industrially produced, chemically processed fats that had never existed in the human food supply before the 20th century. Butter contains butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that feeds the cells lining your colon and reduces intestinal inflammation. Lard contains palmitoleic acid, which has antifungal and metabolic regulatory properties. Tallow contains conjugated linoleic acid, a fat that research has shown to reduce body fat and improve insulin sensitivity. None of these properties exist in canola oil. None of them exist in your heart-healthy sunflower spread. The displacement was not a neutral substitution. It removed a category of biologically active nutrients from the diet and replaced them with chemically degraded industrial products. And the cardiovascular disease epidemic that followed, the epidemic that seed oils were supposed to prevent, accelerated rather than slowed. How did this happen? How did oils that were being questioned in the research literature as far back as the 1950s get stamped with heart health claims for half a century? The answer runs through an organisation you already trust. In 1948, Procter & Gamble, maker of Crisco, the first commercially hydrogenated vegetable shortening, donated $1.7 million to the American Heart Association, effectively funding the organisation into national prominence. In the decades that followed, the seed oil and processed food industries became among the AHA's largest financial supporters, and the AHA's dietary guidance, reduce saturated fat, replace it with polyunsaturated vegetable oils, became the official position of the United States government, the World Health Organization, and every major health authority on Earth. Studies that contradicted this position were deprioritized, delayed, or in the case of the Minnesota coronary experiment, a landmark controlled trial showing that replacing saturated fat with vegetable oil increased cardiovascular mortality, simply not published for 16 years. The lead researcher's own son found the data in his father's basement after his death and published it in the British Medical Journal in 2016. The conflict of interest between the food industry and dietary science is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented, published, peer-reviewed history. And you have been eating the product of that conflict every morning for your entire adult life. So how do you find out whether the damage is already in progress? The standard lipid panel your doctor orders, total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, is not sufficient. What you need is an advanced lipid panel, specifically one that measures LDL particle number and LDL particle size, sometimes called an NMR lipoprofile, or an apolipoprotein B test. ApoB measures the number of atherogenic particles in your blood, the actual count of LDL particles that are small enough and dense enough to penetrate arterial walls, A person can have a perfectly normal total LDL number and a dangerously high ApoB. This happens routinely. It happens particularly in people who eat diets high in refined carbohydrates and seed oils, exactly the diet that replaced saturated fat. Alongside ApoB, ask for a high-sensitivity C-reactive protein test, hs-CRP, which measures systemic inflammation. A healthy hs-CRP is below 1 mg per litre. Anything above 2 is concerning. Anything above 3 is a significant independent predictor of cardiovascular events, regardless of your cholesterol numbers. And if your doctor is willing to order it, an oxidized LDL test, also called ox-LDL, gives you the most direct measure of how much chemically damaged fat is circulating in your bloodstream right now. These are not exotic tests. They exist. You simply have to know to ask for them. The protocol for reversing this begins with a single decision that costs nothing. Stop cooking with seed oils. Remove canola oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, and any product labelled vegetable oil from your kitchen entirely. Replace them with fats that are chemically stable at cooking temperatures. Butter from grass-fed cows, which raises large, buoyant LDL without raising ApoB. Ghee, which has an extremely high smoke point and contains fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Extra virgin olive oil for cold use and low-heat cooking, which is predominantly oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that oxidizes slowly and has a well-documented inverse relationship with cardiovascular disease. And for high-heat cooking, coconut oil or tallow, both of which are saturated fats that are chemically inert under heat and do not produce aldehyde breakdown products the way seed oils do. For your omega-3 balance, 2 to 3 servings of fatty fish weekly. Wild salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring will begin shifting your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio within weeks. Studies measuring red blood cell fatty acid composition show measurable improvements in the ratio within 4 to 6 weeks of sustained omega-3 intake. This is not a slow process. Your cell membranes turn over. The fat you ate last month is not the fat that is in your cells today. The damage is not necessarily permanent. The body is in constant renewal, but only if you give it the right materials. For your breakfast specifically, the transformation is straightforward. The granola with vegetable oil baked in goes. The whole wheat toast with canola spread goes. In their place, eggs cooked in butter, which provide choline for your liver and brain, phosphatidylserine for your cell membranes, and the most bioavailable dietary source of lutein and zeaxanthin on the planet. Full-fat yogurt from grass-fed sources, which provides conjugated linoleic acid and a natural fat matrix that slows glucose absorption. Avocado, which provides oleic acid and potassium. Smoked salmon or sardines on the side, which provide EPA and DHA in the quantities that actually move the needle on your omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. None of this is expensive. None of it requires a nutritionist. It requires only that you stop believing the label on the bottle and start reading the research that the label was designed to make you forget. Every morning that you pour seed oil into a pan, you are not just cooking breakfast. You are making a biochemical decision about whether your arteries will be inflamed today and tomorrow, and every day after. The science on this has been available for decades. What was missing was the will to say it clearly, without the sponsorship of an industry that profits from your confusion. Your body does not need heart-healthy canola oil. It needs the real fats that human cardiovascular systems evolved alongside. Stable, nutrient-dense, and unprocessed. The cardiologists who are now speaking openly about this are not contrarians. They are the ones who followed the data past the point where the funding stopped. Share this with someone who still believes the green label on a bottle of vegetable oil is protecting their heart. Because the most dangerous health myths are always the ones that sound the most responsible. Subscribe, because next week we are going into the specific breakfast foods that are spiking your fasting insulin without you realizing it, and what that does to your arterial walls over time.